Hello, my friends and enemies. Glad you are here. If you enjoy this video, or the channel as a whole, please consider subscribing, hitting the notification bell, liking the video if you think we did a good job, and most importantly, sharing this video everywhere. We would greatly appreciate it. Your support means everything to us. Thanks to everyone who's already supports us. Little disclaimer. I have had my doubts about the show, but this is me trying to give an unbiased, objective review of the Rings of Power. If they do something good, then I will praise them. If they do something bad, I will call them out. But I'll try to look at the show from a perspective of entertainment, lore, realism, and cinematic quality. So please bear with me. This could be a long one. Oh, and it's going to be pretty spoiler heavy, so if you want to watch the show without knowing anything, you might want to skip this one. We begin the episode with Galadriel making a paper boat while kids are playing a Marco Polo game in the field. They stop and ask her if it's finished yet. She puts it in the water. Yes, a paper boat made through origami. A paper boat in the water because paper and water mixed together so well. But Child Garion, it's fantasy. Anything can happen, so of course it could float. Listen here, you sons of goats. Fantasy doesn't mean things aren't consistent. Most things are familiar to the real world, unless explicitly stated otherwise for the viewer. Ships are still made of wood, cities made of stone, and armor made out of metal. Horses are still horses, not flamingos. I could go on for hundreds of thousand years, but you're not here for that. Just know that fantasy equals anything that could happen is a bloody excuse for poor continuity and bad storytelling. So the other kids start bullying Galadriel, because of course they do. Just 1 minute after Galadriel tells us that nothing is evil in the beginning, we have children being cruel. They have no reason to be, but oh well. Cut to make Galadriel look like a warrior from birth, I guess. Anyways, the other kids start throwing rocks at this little paper boat. Galadriel yells at them to stop it, but before she can reach them, a rock hits it and sinks it. And of course, she goes into a blithering rage and tackles the ringleader, pun intended, to the ground and is about to punch him when her brother, Finrod, calls out to her. Did you lose your footing again, Galadriel? Yes, a funny is exactly what we need right now, Finrod. His line implies that Galadriel gets picked on often and gets into scraps just as often. Finrod has shortcut hair because, I don't know really, elves? About 4 minutes in, yes, I said this could be a long one, and I still don't feel like I'm in Middle Earth, let alone in Valinor, where they presumably are, assuming they are following the books. The music feels generic fantasy, the setting seems bland, but let's see what else they have for us. Finrod takes Galadriel to sit under a tree and begins to impart wisdom to her. Something about following the light and walk in the light intensifies. Ugh. But of course, she is so smart that she almost stumps him, and he ends up whispering something in her ear before saying that he won't always be there to impart wisdom to her. That's not foreboding at all. Now we get a look at their home. A very large CGI city that doesn't look great. Its architecture looks more like something Gondor would build than something the elves would build. Lots of rounded tops of buildings. Also, very small for a city. It's not blowing me away, I'll just say that. But next, we'll get a shot at the trees. And I gotta say, they really roll R's in the show. Galadriel, Morgoth. Stop. Get help. Trees don't look too bad. I mean, it's just literally a bright light cloud looking thing around the trees. I don't really know what they're supposed to be looking like in that regard, but that's just how they came across. So we get a story of how the trees are destroyed by Morgoth. I'm sorry, Morgoth. Though it wasn't Morgoth. Okay, I'll stop now. It was actually the giant spider Ungoliant that destroyed the trees at the urging of Morgoth. Yes. But Morgoth himself did not destroy the trees. Probably didn't want to pay for the CGI of a large spider much bigger than a Shelob. So there's a scene where there's some elves that draw swords. All have long hair, except Finrod. We are told the elves resist Morgoth, and a legion of elves went to war. Only a legion? That's not much manpower. Like, most uses of legion implies 1,000, and a single 1,000 went and tried to take on Morgoth? Really? Unlikely. So we get confirmation that they were in Valinor and left to pursue Morgoth. Something is missing here. I can't quite put my finger on it. Ah, yes, the Silmarils. How could I have forgotten? The elves didn't move on Morgoth because of the trees dying. They attacked because Feanor lost his father, and more importantly, the Silmarils to Morgoth. They also committed acts of atrocities on fellow elves, nearly genocidal, and stole a bunch of the best ships ever made to chase Morgoth and arrive in Middle-earth. They just skipped over those important details. Also, the map used in Rings of Power is missing Beleriand, as if it was already sunk. What? So next, we get a great eagle being taken out of the sky and killed by a fell beast. Excuse you? Like, the great eagles are some of the most feared creatures in Arda. They're gonna die to some fell beast. Besides, they're at a battle I don't believe they take part in because of the doom of Mandos. Basically, the Valar are not helping the Noldor, the elves that went, because they disobeyed the Valar at the behest of Feanor. What a great guy. Am I right? In this battle, there's fire, orcs, elves, and explosions. Lots of explosions. Michael Bay is suing Amazon for how many fiery explosions there are. I don't know what would be exploding since trees are on fire, but all I see is flame. But the battle doesn't look too horrible, I guess. It focuses on Finrod, who's fighting a bunch of orcs among his soldiers. But it seems like the only ones dying are the ones that Finrod is killing. Everyone else looks like they're pushing back and forth at each other like an awkward dance at prom. But I guess I better go back first. This particular scene is the classic image everyone is familiar with. It appears that Finrod is yelling out Fingolfin, but is drowned out by the battle. Fingolfin was the High King of the Noldor. I gotta give Amazon props for this particular shot. It's a big battle scene, and it looks well populated with armies, but it looks like it's not going so well for Finrod and his men. And here it shows the Red Day, and seems like the trailers were really the monologue of Galadriel and shows the beginning of the series. Who would have guessed? Like, let's be honest. Now we have a shot, presumably of the same battle, but it could be a different one since Galadriel said it, quote unquote, lasted centuries. There are orc and elf bodies everywhere, and the elves are tending to their wounded. I'm not really sure what the point of collecting all the helmets is. Are they supposed to be like dog tags? Whatever it is, it's not that many. Maybe a couple hundred to a few thousand at most. So it can't be all that bad for the elves, right? Right? So Morgoth is eventually defeated, but his orcs scatter everywhere. This is a problem. And now they all work for this guy. Sauron. Seriously, Amazon? We need to talk. You roll your R's way too much. Just quit already. Like, we get it. You don't know how to enunciate correctly. Wrong emphasis or too much emphasis. Too much of both. It's a cool shot of the sorcerer, Sauron, and a horde of orcs. Check out the size comparison. He is huge. It's like 2 or 3 orcs stacked up on top of each other to even reach the guy. But we learned that Finrod had vowed to hunt down Sauron, but Sauron got to him first. And now Finrod is no longer among the living. And he was marked by a symbol. It appears it is supposed to be some sort of map image of Mordor or something. But you will see it all the time in the series. Don't worry too much about it. Here's where it all goes downhill. Galadriel takes on Finrod's vow to hunt down Sauron, the guy in the image. Yep, the Galadriel is now on the same team as Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. Let's hunt some orc. Wait a minute. So they go on a big journey for centuries, and oh my, Rue Luvatar is the CGI obvious. You have to see it to believe it. A screenshot doesn't do it justice. Now we have the famous climb the ice mountain shot. And she's using Finrod's dagger to climb. I have no idea why they are climbing the face of this mountain. But how light-footed Amazon thinks elves are, they should be like spider monkeys climbing up this thing in minutes at most. Guess even elves have their limits. Just not Galadriel. No, never her. As the elves scale the mountain, they finally find a cliff to stand on. Then they look up to see Galadriel 30-some feet above them still climbing. You go, girl. And now we get our first Commander Galadriel of the series. I presume we will hear that much more often. But her second in command tells her that no one has found the stronghold they are looking for, and that maybe the other commanders are right and the enemy is defeated. He then suggests that they camp for the night, then head home. Really leaning into it. Like, really leaning into it. Of course, Galadriel says what we all would say. That's reasonable. Who am I kidding? The way they have promoted the series, there's no chance of that happening. She says they are losing light and brushes past him, completely ignoring him. Who could have seen that coming? They're caught in a storm that makes each step forward take 10 seconds. The guy in the rear collapses and another soldier tells the commander they need to stop. But she's like, nah, it'll be fine. Sorry, drinker. And keeps pressing onwards. Because nothing says strong commander like leaving your man to die unnecessarily. But the soldier shouts more, so she swivels, about to chew him out, presumably, when she notices the man down. She gives him her cloak because strong women don't need warmth. That's for weaklings and men. So in the middle of a snowstorm, without a cloak and in chainmail, she is confronted about not being able to find the stronghold. Hold up. It's the plot calling. They said, look around you. Well, golly gee whiz, Batman, would you look at that? Ruins of a fortress all around them. And here she was, about to push right past it. So they head inside the seemingly abandoned fortress, and one of her men puts his hand near his torch and says, my hand is past feeling. And she says dead seriously, no, this place is so evil, our torches give off no warmth. What? That's not how the Force works. They head down a passage after she says, "This way." And a soldier asks, "How can you be certain?" "It's colder this way." This is how we choose directions now? You're in a mountain storm. It's cold in every direction. So they come to what seems to be a dead end, but Galadriel sees her face in ice, so she does what any normal person would do in that situation. She punches it until it breaks. Oh look, a door. You go, girl. I have to admit, the fortress looks pretty sweet. They nailed the ambience of the ice fortress. But man, Galadriel needs to open her mouth when she talks. Her teeth are always clenched, and it drives me nuts. So they find a Mark of Sauron and are going to rest quickly before heading north. But Second in Command says they exceeded their orders a long while back. They need to head home and consult the Council of the High King. Good advice. Too bad they probably won't do that. One of the other elves comes across a snow troll and yells it out. No idea how a snow troll in its largeness got past an elf's eyes and ears, but okay. Snow Troll doesn't look too bad, honestly. It's all CGI, but it could be on par with the Cave Troll in Fellowship of the Ring at the Mines of Moria. You know, on par with 2001. What a time to be alive. Oh, not this shot. Why did it have to be this shot? This makes no sense no matter how you look at it. Like, it's fantasy, crowd. Don't open your mouths. Don't even. Just don't. So Galadriel gets a boost from NASA and jumps up before the sword is lifted. Yeah, you heard that right. And Galadriel proceeds to solo a snow troll by herself. Remember in Moria where it took 9 people to kill a single cave troll? Well, buckle up because snow troll killer Galadriel is here to save the day. While her 6 companions get thrown around and beaten, she can just beat it in seconds. Unbelievable. Oh, and remember when the cave troll's hide was so thick they had to open its mouth for Legolas to shoot it to finally kill it? Well, Galadriel can just pull out her brother's dagger and just stab the snow troll in the top of its skull and it dies instantly. Then the companions of the commander Galadriel are told they're leaving at first light and decide to throw a mutiny, led by the second in command. He says that she will go alone. She cannot believe her ears or her eyes as they lay their weapons on the ground. Men. Now, 17 and a half minutes in, we finally get the series intro telling us it's the Rings of Power we're watching, as if there was any doubt. Can you guess where we're going now? Rivanion, to visit some hunters. Hey, we get the shot of the moose horns from the trailers. They appear to be men that are hunting but not finding any prey. But there is a fast movement behind them, and the older man says it must be one of them Harfoots, dangerous creatures. I'm sorry. So sorry. Of course, there was one literally at their feet in a ghillie suit of straw, and then they pop up all around. It appears the hunters were almost on top of the Harfoot's home. Sir Lenny Henry, Sadok Burrows. First appearance of the show. He just sniffs a few times and shouts, "Clear and clear." Then everyone pops up and out of their hideaways. It would appear that the Harfoots can make their town disappear in mere seconds and reappear seconds later. Oh, and they are Irish too. There's a good joke about travelers and being here this time of year, and they end up determining that the last time that had travelers during the frost is because they were lost, not the omen. You had to be there. Oh, and did you know that Harfoots aren't just English? They're Irish too. Don't worry, in a couple of minutes I'll remind you they're Irish still. So now we meet Nori Brandywood, an original character like all Harfoots, amongst a bunch of children and her friend, Poppy Proudfellow. They're out discovering things, and then they stumble upon a berry patch that is full of berries. Now, when I say stumble, I mean Poppy literally stumbles and falls face first into mud. And speaking of mud, a child finds something in the mud and calls Nori over, asking what it is, because it looks like a footsie. Nori sees the footsie and knows what it is, but just says that it is a dog. Just a dog. But Nori trembles because she knows what the footsie belongs to a warg. Oh, by the way, look behind you. Nori and Poppy gather the kids and head back to their home, and then a warg sniffs nearby. Like, you cannot expect me to believe that a warg would be that close by and not smell Harfoots making all sorts of noises with berry juice dripping down their faces and not spot them instantly, let alone smell them. The warg even looks right at them. Like, look at the image. They're sitting there in the back corner trying to crawl through the fence that they walked in on. And here's the freaking wolf, just warg standing right at them. Like, what? Blood armor. Still not feeling Middle Earth in the music, though. But enter Elrond Half-Elven. I'm sorry, Harold Elrond. At least that's what the show calls him. And an elf arrives to tell him that the council will not permit him to join at the next meeting. Elves only. I'm not even joking. Half-elf discrimination exists in Middle Earth now. What's worse is that Elrond is the recipient. The Elrond. From one of the most important elven lines ever. Lord Elrond. And he is kept out of the elven lords only meeting. Like, his brother just happened to found the Númenórean kingdom. That one. The writers need to resign immediately. Like, this is butchering of so many proportions. But I know it'll only get worse. Elrond learns that his friend has arrived. It's a she, and you guessed it, it's Galadriel. So he rushes to meet her, and we finally get an actual beautiful shot of actual elven architecture. They're in Lindon, the capital of the High Elves, only ruined by the dialogue to follow. Elrond calls Galadriel commander of the northern armies, warrior of the wastelands. The trailer favorite of I half expected you to arrive caked in grime and mud. This time, frostbite and troll blood, and no armor. Lady, open your mouth when you speak. Your mouth is not wired shut. Oh, so irritating. Then Galadriel demands an audience with the king, Gil-galad himself. She wants a new company and more supplies to pursue Sauron. But Elrond explains that the company she had did not defy her. She had defied the High King. But the High King has graciously commended her for her achievements and not her insolence. She ignored any limit placed on her by authority, presumably because men only exist to keep her down, the patriarchy and all that. She literally blows off Elrond's warnings and wants the audience. Throw her in the brig, I say. Mutiny will not be tolerated. Time to switch gears and head back to the Harfoots. Nori gets back with the kids and goes and learns from her father that she missed the travelers. She is disappointed, obviously, because she likes to see things. She's an adventurer. But during a conversation with her mother, we learn that Nori is the adventurous type like Bilbo and Frodo. And it's not well thought of by the other Harfoots, much less her mother. And now we're back again to Galadriel. The pacing is crazy all over the place. An awards ceremony is held where Galadriel and her company are given laurels of gold to celebrate their acts of bravery and valor by the High King, Gil-galad himself. I thought it was a rather sparse of onlookers for such a prestigious occasion. You know, this is an event that you would want everyone in London to know about, not a private party. Gilgalad's speech seems to be one Elrond was writing when you first met him, or Elrond was trying to alter it for some purpose. But Gilgalad's speech ends with, "And now, at last, they return to us in triumph, for they have proven beyond any doubt that our days of war are over. Today, our days of peace begin." Oof. That look between Galadriel and Gil-galad has so much meaning in it. Well, so much for talking to the king about another expedition. I can at the very least appreciate subtle political maneuvering that is going on, even though I don't necessarily think it has much of a place in a Tolkien work. There was some minor stuff going on in the Silmarillion, but all in all, not very often. But then I had my mind blown where Gil-galad offers them the greatest honor of all, a trip to the Grey Havens, no mention of Círdan, and a ship to Valinor to dwell there forever. Except it can't go back. That's part of the doom of Mandos. The Noldor cannot go back to Valinor. You know, the whole genociding your fellow elves and stealing their ships and disobeying the Valar. You know, remember that whole thing? Like the Valar have made it so. Like, did they do any research? Like at all? Any effort to know what the story was? No? Figures. Terrible writers. So after this party, they shoot fireworks off. Where do elves get fireworks from? They have some Astari in the back room making them for the elves? Like, I'm looking at you, Mithrandir. No, they don't. I'm not aware of anyone else using fireworks in the history of Arda. Not saying that there couldn't be knowledge of them or crafts of them, but it seems highly unlikely. And elves, despite having some silly ones, are typically too serene for frivolous gestures. They would rather have their stars, not temporary lights. I'll give them this shot. It looks well done. The flowers seem less realistic, but the carving is nice. The lighting of the fireworks is nice in the room, but obviously is nonsense. But during a conversation between Galadriel and Elrond, we get a repeat of the "my brother's task, now my task," as she tells Elrond she is refusing the High King's gift. And the best dialogue in the series comes next. "You have not seen what I have seen. I have seen my share. You have not seen what I have seen." Oh, it hurts. It hurts so much. Morfydd Clark Galadriel is the most unlikable character I've seen in a long time. Move out of the way, Brie Larson. You are retired now. Actually, now that I think of it, I'd rather hang out with Feanor than this Galadriel. And that is saying something, since I would never want to be near Feanor. And anyone who knows anything about Feanor would know that that's quite the not compliment. But Galadriel has a serious case of PTSD in this episode. I don't say that lightly. If this was how the books were written, I would appreciate it a lot more. But she just gives off the vibes of, I am right and everyone else is wrong. And it makes me not even want to understand her. She needs the healers to at least help alleviate some mental strain, and needs the peace of the Valar to get over her fears of evil like what Frodo did. At the very least, she needs to get over herself. Like she could single-handedly take on armies of orcs and other dark terrors and slay Sauron. Hubris. Elrond talks her into going to Valinor, and that if anything ever comes of this evil she fears, he will make it right. He tells her to put up her sword, and she responds with, Without it, what am I to be? Well, I mean, literally anything? Like, actually Galadriel for once? You know, the ruler, the elegant, the beautiful, the serene. I mean, the ruler of elves and elvendom and Middle Earth? Like, what Galadriel is? But of course, Elrond just says, what you have always been, my friend. The cringe. So, to the Southlands. Oh, look, the land of the synchronized harvesters. Gold medalist several years running. So we see two elven soldiers entering a human town, but it seems that everyone is giving them the stink eye. And what in Iru's name are they wearing on their heads? Who authorized this? Is this Middle Earth's equivalent of a VR headset? Blood and ashes, that looks idiotic. Oh well. We get introduced to Arondir, another original character. Oh joy. Oh look. It's Bronwyn. Yet another original character. Plenty of those to go around. And she left the building. Arondir asks questions about the poison that the men were talking about, and it appears that some grass was poisoned. He grills the butcher, and a young hothead tells him to give over. He then pulls the "You people" card. Oh no, you didn't. And we get our first bout of "Let the past go," and Arondir responds with, "The past is with us all." You know, mixed signals, Amazon. Are we letting go or holding on to the past? Make up your mind. The trailer left me confused 1,000 times over and again as it is. But something the hothead says in Arondir's response speaks of another event that had happened in the past that apparently left the humans at the mercy of the elves. Apparently, the true king will come and lift their pointy shoes off of the humans. Arondir prevents an altercation and leaves. Look who's outside. It's Bronwyn. She gives Arondir a bottle with some seeds from a rare flower in them. We learn that among the elves, their healers are called artificers. Doesn't make much sense to me, but okay. He does mention that their healers don't necessarily need to quote unquote heal because their body heals pretty well rapidly. So their artificers are some sort of like imaginariumists or something. But then the butcher comes out of the building, startles their romantic get together, and they split quickly with Arondir leaving. I gotta make a comment. What is with these elves and short hair? Are they like deliberately destroying the beautiful descriptions of elves with hideous haircuts to spite Tolkien and Peter Jackson? It's like a plague. A little conversation with his fellow elf soldier shows that the other elf knows why they are coming to the town and that he has to keep it secret from the warden because they could both get into trouble. Arondir shrugs him off with some weirdly placed humor, and the show tries to treat the other elf as a Pippin character. Except it is out of place for the most elves. These aren't elves of Rivendell. The other elf points out that only twice in the history has a man and an elf ever happened to be a thing, and in both situations, it ended in tragedy and death. And just as they finish the conversation, they receive the call from the High King that the war is over and all the outposts are disbanded and they are leaving. Arondir goes to a tall tower and mopes. He has been there for 79 years guarding the area. Cool tower, bad green screen. So we head back to Bronwyn in her healer's hut with her son, Theo. Bronwyn is a single mother. Just then, Arondir shows up at her house. She goes outside to meet him and says, I heard you were leaving. Wait, what? How did you hear they were leaving? The elves received the order, but it is unlikely that word was sent to the villages because it is unlikely that any elf would care to tell humans. So how does she know? He, of course, admits they are leaving, and they're about to tell each other about their undying love for each other when Theo breaks up the moment, saying that there's a man out front. Bronwyn goes and sees the man who brought his cow and wants her to take a look at him. Says the cow is sick. Arondir shows up asking questions, then bends down and tries milking the cow. But blood comes out. He finds out where the east the cow wandered and is going to head that way. Bronwyn tries to stop him, but then does what any responsible mother does and leaves her kid to go with him. Huh? You heard that right. Great parenting skills. Pan over to Theo and Hothead running to a farmhouse. More of a barn, but yes. Seems they aim to check out some loot that is being hidden there. But Hothead asks about Arondir and Bronwyn's relationship, and that everyone knows about it. Hothead mentions that his dad probably ran off because of it. Theo gets angry, but opens a chest and pulls out a bundle. A sword with the blade broken off lays in the bundle. See anything familiar? That'd be Sauron's mark on the blade near the hilt. And now the sword is speaking to Theo. No, I did not make that up. It has Sauron's famous whisper techniques as the mark bursts into flame, and it's like holding a Palantir. But enough of that. Not like it's important. Galadriel! On a boat, in armor, standing like a statue. Why? I don't know. Those flaming sword hilts are bloody huge. A troll could probably one-hand that. Definitely not something you'd want to let one of them have on the field. Elrond watches her until she passes out of his sight. The High King is there with them, and they talk about all the evil still lingering, but then Gil-galad brings up that Elrond is to help the legendary elven smith Celebrimbor on his next big project. I felt like I was in the corporate world. Next big project. Well, they wanted rings of power to reflect the modern era. Congratulations! You succeeded in making me miserable. So much for blissful escapism. So Celebrimbor arrives to tell Elrond about the upcoming project. Elrond kind of fangirls for a moment. Let's leave that alone for now and head over to Sadok Burrows, Lenny Henry, reading his book and looking up into the stars. He is startled by Nori showing up and wanting to know what he's talking about, and he gives her a tongue lashing. But she begs him to tell her. The skies are strange. There it is, folks. The joke trailer is real. All those people looking up in the sky, all those shots of people looking in the sky, here we are. I feel like I'm in a revolving door that keeps pushing me out to push me back in. We're now with Arondir and Bronwyn, and they're traveling east still. Arondir asks about the people of her town, and she says they're good people. But Arondir says those people had an especially strong allegiance to Morgoth in the past. She, of course, gets angry with him, but he sucks up to her. Aw, look, they're having a moment. Be a shame if something interrupted. Oh, look, the town is burning. Revolving door, Galadriel on a ship. But now they're having armor taken off of them as well as weapons and are taking clothes off? Not all the way, but random underlaying of clothes is still strange. But Galadriel doesn't want her brother's dagger taken from her, but eventually let's go. A bunch of birds show up from the sunset, and the elves, except for Galadriel, start singing. Randomly. The clouds pull back like a curtain, and the gray mist above the ocean is opened like a door, and blazing light pours through. The sight of Valinor makes the elves breathless as they look into the obvious CGI. Better luck with the mirage, mate. Bet something's about to happen. Cue kinda creepy music while Galadriel stares at her brother's dagger, and Finrod repeats his speech from centuries back. Then we see a big red comet thing fly through the sky. Well, would you look at that? Something happened. Guess who else noticed? Huh, Gil-galad. Oh, Elrond, Celebrimbor, and some guards. Everyone, it would appear. But now Galadriel is getting cold feet, as it were. The light of Valinor is within reach, and she seems not to like it. The suspenseful music picks up. Oh, hey, they saw it too. And then they hold hands. Aww. Oh, snap. The Ents too? Didn't see that coming, did you? Galadriel is being torn by going to Valinor and hunting Sauron. I have to say, her facial expressions are hilarious. Like, hilariously bad. Of course, Nori sees the comet. Okay, I saw this coming, but I didn't want to believe it. She actually dived into the water with her dagger near the shores of Valinor, on the other side of the world from Middle Earth. This isn't a hop, skip, and a jump away across a pond. It's flaming thousands of miles away from the shores of Middle Earth. Who wrote this flaming fish guts of a story? Mother's milk in a cup. Gil-galad sees a leaf fall from a tree, but picks it up and turns it over, and it's got a parasite or evil mojo going on it. It starts whispering to him. Nothing says plans to dominate all life like tell your enemies to prepare for you. Nori shows up to the comet landing zone. Feel dizzy yet? The nearby damage to life from the explosion of the landing seems like not even close to replicating the burst of fire. Should have eviscerated every tree within 100 feet based off of the fire explosion. But hey, old man at least remembered to wear his underwear when he crashed, landed on the ground. Some decency, it would seem. Can't be a starry since they arrived on the shores of Middle Earth, and this guy is all the way in Ravanian territory. So who is it supposed to be? Anyway, that's a wrap. It's been a wild first episode. Not much to remember Tolkien's work here. Very little made sense. They would have been better off following a different character, maybe Isildur's. We could see Sauron's rise from his point of view, and Sauron's subjugation by Ar-Pharazôn, and the fall of Numenor all the way up to the Battle of the Last Alliance. That would have been cool. The music did nothing for me, which is sad because I love the Lord of the Rings music. It's my favorite soundtrack, no exceptions. I just can't get into this. The CGI had its moments where it looked good, but more often than not, it looked bad. This series should have focused more on practical effects to make it shine more, but ultimately the writing was the downfall of the show. They're trying to make sense of something nonsensical. It would take more work to make it up than just to follow the material, but they didn't have the correct rights anyways. I mean, I guess we'll never get the good version of this. And yes, I do watch too many Mahler videos. Mahler, if you ever do watch this, you're a bad influence. But anyway, thanks guys for hanging out. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, but most importantly, please share this video everywhere. Thank you for your support. Walk in the light, my friends.